I was warned about this one, but nothing prepared me for the nightmare that lay ahead. Hey guys, welcome back to Proper Chuffed. My name's Hilton and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. That's half the fun of this, isn't it? Before we continue, if you're new to this channel, hope you enjoy this content, and if you do, please consider subscribing. That would be a great help. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. It's good to see you again. Now, I'll be the first to admit I'm not a huge GWR fan. No offense to any of you out there. And please don't click off this video because this is an interesting locomotive. And while I was assessing my options for the locomotive that I'd like to pick up as my very first GWR locomotive, I received a fair number of warnings about this particular model. Now, being the absolute masochist that I am, I decided to go ahead despite all the warnings. And in today's overview, we're going to take a look at why people might have warned me about it. This particular engine has been plagued with problems. I've seen all sorts of things about it. Oddly enough, not a hell of a lot of videos. So I thought I'd finally get around to making my GWR 4700 Night Owl video. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a while now, you'll know that I absolutely love very rare, limited number prototype locomotives. And it made total sense for me to go for the GWR Night Owl, simply because there were only 9 ever made. A little bit of background on this loco. I actually thought I was buying a new model. Turns out I was buying a second-hand one from Olivia's Emporium, and I think that is actually linked in some way to Olivia's trains, which I've heard mixed things about, I'll admit. Still, upon inspection, it definitely is a second-hand locomotive. And as such, today I'll be treating this video slightly different to my usual overviews, and we'll actually be opening up the Helgen Night Owl to see what makes it tick. Now, before I go any further, I did have some issues with this locomotive initially, and I unfortunately did not record them when I had those problems. It ran quite poorly, I'll admit, straight out of the box, and it was no surprise to me given that it was a second-hand locomotive. However, this was not indicated on the website when I purchased it. I was told it was a smooth, consistent runner, and it was anything but. So my intention was to open it up and take a look at it, but it came with no instruction manual, which I found rather odd. No surprise, it's a second-hand locomotive. Sometimes booklets just go missing. So I contacted Helgen directly, sent them an email and said, hey guys, can you send me this instruction manual? I need to know how to open up the Night Owl, as I didn't really want to make any mistakes or screw up the locomotive. I got no response, and after about a month, I just decided to dig in and try and fix it myself. I managed to fix the problem, and I'll explain it a little bit later when we open up the loco. The point is, we were not off to a very good start. Regardless, I'm trying to be as objective as I can with this one. So without further ado, let's take a look at Helgen's infamous Night Owl. So as I mentioned before, this is a second-hand model as far as I'm aware. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because there's not all that much to show. Inside the sleeve, we have the model inside the clamshell packaging, which I'll pull out now. One of the things about this second-hand model is that this is the only piece of documentation that I got with it. This does show you how to fit DCC, but unfortunately there's no further paperwork which tells me how to maintain or open up the model, which was half of my problem with this. Still, I try and remain as objective as possible with this model. Inside the clamshell sleeve, we have a small detail pack featuring NEM couplers and the footplate bridge, as well as some brake rods. Opening up the model, we're presented with our rather resplendent Night Owl. This is a very heavy locomotive. I know I've been saying that a lot lately, and it seems that obviously locos just are getting heavier and heavier. But in comparison to what I've seen with most locomotives of this size, especially steam ones, this is a particularly heavy thing. Out of the box, it looks absolutely perfect for a second-hand model anyways. Running gear looks clean and smooth, and there's a lot of intricate detail here too. I'm super curious to weigh this up. So out comes the trusty kitchen scale, 589 grams. So I'm expecting some pretty promising pulling power with this one, and a rather torquey engine, I hope. But let's get straight onto the history of the Night Owl and take a closer look at this model. The GWR 4700 class, nicknamed the Night Owls, was an innovative type of heavy freight locomotive designed by George Jackson Churchward and introduced by the Great Western Railway in 1919. These locomotives earned their nickname because they were intended for long-distance overnight freight services, a vital part of the GWR's operations. Before the 4700, GWR relied on smaller engines like the 2800 class for freight. However, as the demand for faster overnight goods services increased, Churchward saw the need for a locomotive that could handle heavier loads at higher speeds. This led to the creation of the 4700, a design that combined the power of a freight engine with the speed of an express passenger locomotive. The first engine, number 4700, rolled out of Swindon Works in April 1919, and over the next 10 years, 8 more were built, bringing the total to 9. One of the key features of the 4700 was its 280 wheel arrangement, which provided excellent stability and tractive effort. However, unlike the purely freight-oriented 2800, the 4700 was fitted with larger driving wheels, allowing it to reach higher speeds. This made it ideal for express goods and parcel trains, particularly those carrying perishable items like fish that needed swift delivery. Another standout feature was its superheated boiler, which improved efficiency by heating steam to a higher temperature before it entered the cylinders. This design reduced both water and coal consumption. The large firebox also helped generate the significant amount of steam needed for sustained high-speed runs with heavy loads. Its frames were lengthened to accommodate the bigger driving wheels and a longer boiler, giving the locomotive a commanding presence on the tracks. The 4700 was a resounding success, fulfilling Churchward's vision of a high-speed freight engine. It became a cornerstone of the GWR's overnight services, regularly hauling goods, mails, and even perishables between major industrial centres like London, Bristol, Birmingham, and South Wales. These locomotives were occasionally used for passenger services too, demonstrating their versatility. By the 1960s, the 4700 class began to be retired as steam engines were replaced by diesel and electric. The last of the class was withdrawn in 1964, and unfortunately, none of the original engines were preserved. However, their story didn't end there. In recent years, the 4700 Steam Locomotive Group has been working on an ambitious project to rebuild a new 4700, number 4709, using parts from scrap locomotives, including the frame of a 2800 class. This project aims to recreate the Night Owl, bringing its legacy back to life. I am not a GWR man. If I am completely honest, I find the Churchward design in general a little too samey, but today is the day that I take my hat off and profusely apologize to all of you GWR men for that uneducated comment. The 4700, or Night Owl as I will refer to it from here on, is a monster of an engine. Those 8 powerful driving wheels standing proud and pronouncing its purpose. This engine means business. Now, Helgen have historically not fared very well when it comes to their steam offering, and having one of their more complex engines, the LMS Garrett, in my shed, I've yet to taste the bitter disappointment that so many seem to share with this company. I'm approaching the Night Owl cautiously, but from sheer visuals alone, this is a rather impressive kit already. Starting from the front, we're presented with a long running board that covers the length of the 8 driving wheels and a fairly large front bogie pairing. This is a brilliantly riveted piece of kit, particularly underneath the smoke box where an impressive amount of detail is present. On the front buffer, the vacuum pipe and couplings have already been fitted, probably by Helgen, knowing them. The smoke box surrounds are equally detailed, with a separately fitted handle to boot. Though, interestingly, the hinges seem to be a part of the mold and look a little bit shallow. The handrail, which extends the length of the boiler, is wonderfully straight and seems aptly to scale. Moving down the length of the engine, we find the magnificent driving wheels. These would be an impressive 5 foot 8 inches in real world terms, and they just look so beautifully lined here in their sets of 4. Helgen have paid close attention to the molding of these. They look superb in combination with their brake shoes and suitably straight gear to boot. You may notice a bit of wear on the front cylinders here. This, I am sure, is not factory weathered, and I can only guess the previous owner was a little heavy-handed with this model. Moving along, the driving and brake rods shoot straight down the length of the running plate and are presented in the same color as the rest of the bodywork. Under the boiler, we're able to see more attention to detail with the axle boxes and various GWR wizardry present. I love that some of these have been picked out in red too, adding a flash of eye-catching color. Above the running line, we're presented with a very attractive boiler, and of course, the attention-grabbing copper-topped safety valve the GWR is so synonymous with. I am, behind the scenes, an incredibly critical observer of how manufacturers represent this single piece of kit. For example, Dapple Manners are way too shiny, but with this particular model, I feel Helgen have done a smashing job on the color here. Fight me in the comments below if you disagree. This piece is plastic, but the copper color here is really well done in my opinion. Wow, that was a lot of jabbering about a single piece. Sorry, not sorry. Moving along, we're presented with the cab. Under close inspection here, there's a bit of paint bleed on some of the parts of the piping, but this is negligible, and frankly, I find that the amount of separately fitted parts, including the firebox handle, rather impressive. The cab is wonderfully exposed, though I doubt the crews thought that at the time, as they burned Welsh coal late into the night in the West Country. My point is, it's a very visible part of the engine, so it makes sense that Helgen have made an effort to detail this up to the extent that they have, and that's commendable. Before we move on to the tender, let's flip the owl on its side and take a look at the connection. A fairly robust piece of metal holds the tender relatively close to the engine, and this is paired with a pair of electrical cables that link the decoder-fitted tender to the motor-powered engine. And I never noticed this initially, but there are two tiny buffers on the front of the tender too. How cute! The GWR moves in mysterious ways. Moving to the tender, we're presented with a grand bit of kit. With numerous rivets dotted across nearly every axis, it's not lacking in detail or potential leaks, I would guess. I feel like tenders are often an afterthought, but this one is rather impressive, and we all love a holy tender, don't we? The GWR went through a variety of midlife crises regarding its livery throughout its long history, and the insignia of this particular model represents its post-war livery. The lettering and crest are neatly applied, showing a fair bit of detail on the crest to boot. This livery was exclusive to express passenger and freight engines during the post-war era. An interesting fact, the GWR seemed to do a lot of tender swapping, so this may not have been 4707's exact tender. And you may be thinking, Hilton, wow, you're a regular GWR encyclopedia. And it's here that I point you to the Little Western Railway and Kiln Line on YouTube as my brilliant sources of info. Thank you, Rob and James. The coal fitted inside the tender isn't what I would call top-notch, but it's passable considering how big and chunky Welsh coal is. I think a smattering of coal added to the top would be a welcome addition. The two toolboxes on the top of the tender pull away to reveal the screw points that open up the tender and DCC socket. These are friction fitted, and just like the GWR itself, are a rather quirky way to access the inner workings of the tender. While not a model that can be found at most retailers these days, it can be found for around £200 on eBay and various smaller retailers who still do have stock. The Night Owl is equipped with a 21-pin DCC socket and can be sound fitted using a custom profile. In the interest of curiosity, because I sure do want to show you what's inside this model, we're going to open up the Night Owl. Starting with the tender, we remove the toolboxes, which are snugly friction fitted, as well as the water cap. All three of these have screws that need to be removed in order to access the decoder unit. Inside, we find the decoder board, which is rather loose, although I suspect they're meant to be attached to the bottom of the tender using a glue. Mine probably just came loose. Still, it doesn't give you a hell of a lot of confidence, does it? Here you can insert your decoder, 21 pin, and there's ample space for a speaker too. I'll reattach the top of the tender off camera, as I needed to hold up the weight while undoing the rest of the body to prevent the drawbar being bent. The two rear screws under the body remove the cab, while the further two release the body from the running plate. One of these is under the front bogie and the other just below the firebox, although it took me a while as I didn't have any instructions. The body lifts off cleanly, albeit not without losing one of the support frames under the smoke box, but I'll reattach that later. We're presented with a truly strange design inside, not something I've seen before in a model. Most of the weight of this model is in the barrel of the boiler, and it seems so is the motor. I'm able to remove the outer body shell from this weight and separate the weight by undoing two screws inside the inner body. Inside, the small motor is present, and it's becoming fairly apparent as to why so many people have had issues with this model. Although simple, it's unconventional and frankly, quite bizarre. On my model, these two halves of the body were not screwed together correctly. The motor was lifting while trying to catch the gear on the underframe. I tightened these two halves and secured them firmly to the body, and it reduced all further gearing problems. So I'm going to put this back together, and let's put it on the track and see how it performs now. And we're on track with the Night Owl. Now, this has been running fairly smoothly since I fixed the issue that I had previously. I do apologize for not recording that, but let's get her underway. Right off the bat, a fairly smooth motion. There's a tiny little bit of cogging that is very visible at the slower speeds, but it does feel like once it's up to speed, this does dissipate and is not noticeable. Both forwards and backwards, the Night Owl seems to have no issues whatsoever. It also does a great job over the points. Although, weirdly enough, when I haven't been recording, it has had a couple of issues where it sometimes catches. Murphy's Law, when you're recording, nothing happens, but when the camera's switched off, of course there's going to be a problem. It feels like the front bogey is a little bit too loose and often just jumps the track, which can be quite frustrating to see. Okay, so as you can see, we've encountered a problem. I have absolutely no idea what's gone wrong. This locomotive was running perfectly fine, and now we've just come to a stop, basically. Right, upon closer inspection, it does seem that some of the brake shoes have caught up with the running gear. I'm not sure exactly how this wedged up inside between the wheel and the running gear, but that seems to be the problem. This is now the second major issue I've had with the locomotive, and I guarantee you I have not scripted this. This is exactly how it's played out. I'm going to readjust this brake shoe and push it back in. Hopefully this will be able to resolve the issue. All right, and we're moving again. But okay, here we go again. A little bit of a shift and we can push it along its way again.
Oh, come on, man.
But once again, that brake shoe just got caught up. I honestly couldn't have scripted this better. Once again, another problem from the Night Owl. Okay, do I look frazzled? I am frazzled. Frazzled is actually the wrong word for it. I'm bloody irritated. Okay, so couple things. This is a second-hand model, so I can't really judge it and its performance out of the box. However, I have decided to stop my running test because unfortunately, I just cannot get this to work. I thought I had alleviated the problem earlier when I had fixed the issue with the motor connecting with the worm gear. It seems not. Now we have a new problem, and that is the brake shoes on the model that keep on clogging up basically with all the running gear. Unless, I guess, I took a knife to this and cut off the brake shoes, that would probably resolve it short term and get us up and running again. But I don't want to do that. I don't feel comfortable doing that yet to this model. This is such a difficult one for me because I don't know if, I should just ditch this entire video. I've already put a lot of effort into it, so I thought, I'm thinking of posting it as it is, just to kind of, see if other people have had similar issues, or just give you my honest experience with it. It's really disappointing, honestly. I'm pretty gutted about it. I don't think this is a particularly well-built, well-designed model. I like the way it looks. I think they've got the aesthetics right of it. I think there's a lot of things that are in its favor, especially the weight. The weight is really impressive. The running performance and the quality of that is really not great. I don't know if I'm going to tackle this again. Perhaps I will. Perhaps I'll do a follow-up if I'm able to get it running again and maybe give it a bit more of an objective appraisal. Perhaps though, this is maybe the most objective and honest appraisal I can give it, because it just doesn't perform. Bit of a weird one. Again, because it's a second-hand loco, not something straight out of the box, I can't really say, okay, this is a Helgen problem and this is it. But based on what I've seen, look at me holding this model like some kind of war stick. Based on what I've seen online and through various videos, this is not a great model. And I'm really kind of gutted about it. I was warned this was a shot in the dark for me, hoping that I'd be one of those people that had a well-performing and good running one. But it seems that hope was maybe a bit misplaced. So yeah, not a great start to 2025 with models. It can only go up from here, as far as I'm concerned. So you guys let me know what you think about it. Should I just cut off all the brake shoes? I can't send this locomotive back to Olivia's because, that would cost me way too much money. I'd ideally like to get it running, to be honest with you, because I do like it. I like the locomotive, I like the look, I like the history. But anyways, I'm rambling now. Point is, I don't know. I've never been at this point in a video, I've either had like a good loco or a bad loco. Not something in the middle ground where I'm kind of a little bit torn about it, and I've never not been able to complete my running session with it. So yeah, I guess we'll revisit the Night Owl at some point. If you guys are interested enough, let me know in the comments. Bit of a weird one this week. I don't know what to say, to be honest with you. It sucks. Don't buy this loco, in my opinion. Based on what I've seen, if you are interested in a night owl, I'd probably avoid this. Regardless, let's hope that the next loco at least makes a full length of the loop at Dun Roman in the next video. I really do appreciate you watching. I at least hope you enjoyed the history and the detail, but yeah, running just wasn't possible with this. As always, thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Keep your engines fired and stay on track. All the best.